Good morning, everyone. Okay, it's 9:05. Let's go ahead and get started. Good morning. I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein. Welcome to the 17th installment of my weekly virtual office hours. People continue to say they really enjoy hearing updates during this live stream address, and I'll continue to do them during the shelter in place, which is definitely going to be a while longer, it looks like. This Facebook Live event allows me to give you some updates on the state, county, city level, answer some questions, and just provide some general words of encouragement. So I hope that you find them useful. Thank you for allowing me to continue to represent you and work for Sunnyvale during these extraordinary times. I hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy. Please remember to take care of yourself, both physically and mentally. Get out of the house if you get a chance. Definitely staying at home for this long has been, very difficult for a lot of people, and I add myself to that list, ready to see things open up a little bit more, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Keep following the county health order. You can continue to stop the spread of the virus, and that's what's critical. Having good hand hygiene, not touching your face, maintaining safe social distance when you're out, only going out for essential services, but reducing the total number of people that you come in contact with, and of course, just continuing to wear your mask. It helps, and of course, it's mandatory from a state and a county standpoint. As I've said before, if you need a face covering, please contact me. I have several that people are donating for the mayor to pass out, and we're not out of the woods yet. The numbers still continue to tick up a little bit, although they steadied off slightly, and from a state level, from a national level, you see lots of outbreaks. Um, you could be a carrier of the virus and be asymptomatic, not have symptoms. So please be careful when you're interacting with anyone, even with your own family. It's very difficult to I've heard multiple stories from people that have lost loved ones, and my heart goes out to those people right now. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get started. We now have reached 115 days since the March 16th public health order started the shelter in place and slowed the general spread of COVID-19 in our county. Since that declaration, a lot's happened. A lot seems to be happening every day. And I have daily conference calls, press conferences to watch, confer and advocate on your behalf. And it's been successful. It's been definitely very busy time for the last 4 months. So let's talk about, let's go ahead and get started on talk about what's happened at the state, at the county, and at the city level over the last week or so. So last Thursday, and actually last Tuesday through Thursday, the advocacy paid off, and we had COVID-19 testing here in Sunnyvale at Murphy Park. And that was the county pop-up van, and we'd done a lot of advocating to try to get testing in North County, and so that was important. The testing was free. No appointment was necessary. Testing was provided regardless of where someone lives, as well as regardless of their immigration status. So it was good to see over 3 days, more than 1,500 people got tested. And I just want to thank the CERT volunteers. And if you didn't get tested, you can always go to sccfreetest.org. And, there's a full listing of pop-up locations around the county. I'm advocating to try to get, another pop-up location back here at Sunnyvale, Murphy Park. And there's El Camino Hospital is also El Camino Healthcare on Grant is also doing free testing by appointment. So you can go there and get tested. The Planned Parenthood in Mountain View is doing testing. So there are a lot of options that are close by, but it's always good to see locations within your own city and having that available to everyone. So the county website, scctest.org, gives the pop-up locations, gives the clinics, also gives the hospitals that are doing testing. And that's, it's critical, especially for essential workers, to be tested, especially as we continue to open up and people are exposed to more people. Last Thursday, Dr. Cody, and we announced it last Friday here, Dr. Cody and the health department had a press conference and announced the new health order. And, it was kind of to equalize where we stood with some of the counties around us that had much worse numbers, but had, not just outdoor seating, but had, barbershops, healthcare, health salons. There were a lot of things that were open that we didn't have open. And, what was important was trying to, even though we saw an uptick in cases, our hospitalizations were very low, or moving from very low to low. And we've actually taken a certain amount of patients from outside of our county because our numbers were so low. And if we want to, if we want to be safe, and we can be safe, we want to open, and everybody's, a lot of people were asking, especially small businesses, when are we going to open? The public health officer listened, and they decided on kind of a new paradigm. And that new paradigm isn't just specific on businesses, but it's a whole risk reduction model. And so that new model basically defined a new phase of opening. It's as opposed to just kind of a stage, and are you early stage or late stage? It gave a general description on, various businesses that would be allowed to open, and includes everything that's open now, but the same salons, barbershops, Pilates studios, yoga studios, as well as defining what gatherings that could meet, you know, 20 people indoors and 60-person outdoors. And so that was submitted to the state last Thursday. And that whole risk reduction framework, and it was important that that would go into place either July 13th or when the state finally approved, whichever one was later. And so that was submitted last Thursday. On Friday, that order was actually denied. So that request for a variance from the state was actually denied. And so that started a whole bunch of other meetings. Now, also on Friday evening, and some of you might have heard, ABC, the state alcohol beverage control representatives in Morgan Hill and Gilroy, they showed up armed, and they basically told restaurants that were doing al fresco dining in Morgan Hill and Gilroy that they can't open on Saturday for outdoor dining because we didn't get, an appropriate variance. And we had just been denied on our new variance, but everyone was under the assumption that the variance that we put in place at the beginning of June, which allowed al fresco dining, which was one of the main additions that did, it was in compliance with the state. For whatever reason, at least the officers on site said that was not the case, and that, conceivably, if the restaurants opened up on Saturday, they could be fined, and even the patrons in those restaurants could be fined. So that started a lot of phone calls and emails on Friday night at around 11 p.m. And it was a very busy weekend as far as talking to people within the county and trying to figure out how we move forward. It's like all of our small businesses are really having a hard time, especially small restaurants. And as much as moving back, some of them are only doing takeout. Those that are doing al fresco dining, it was really important to make sure that not all of a sudden the ABC didn't come in and say that they're going to try to shut them down. So that was pretty important. And so talked to multiple people at the county level, talked to Mayor Constantine in Morgan Hill, and basically trying to figure out a way forward. Of course, it was Saturday, Sunday, and a long weekend. It was unsure of how things would be done, but we got a general understanding that would be cleared up early at the beginning of this week. So at least by the end of the weekend, our restaurants thought that we were fine, or I was able to at least communicate to our restaurants that we think we're okay. That being said, until the variance is actually approved, there was a big issue that ABC could show up and say they could shut down any al fresco dining experience. And so it was good to hear that ABC was actually moving out of our county into other counties to kind of check up on them. But that being said, there was still kind of that worry. And so we'll talk a little bit about more about that later. Last Saturday, of course, was July 4th. And, as much as it was a day of independence and fireworks, we also had a good event locally. It was the 104th birthday of Mary Hill Gleason. And so, this was a long-time resident. She moved to Sunnyvale in 1966 and has been, active in the city. She worked at Lockheed, I think, and definitely has been a part of our community for many years. And so it was good to have her daughter planned, and lots of neighbors showed up to celebrate, all with masks and socially distanced. There was a big car parade, and even public safety did a drive-by with a fire engine and the police cars. So it was actually very good from that standpoint. It was nice to have a little celebration. I joined in and presented a proclamation for her recommendation, and there's also just joined the car parade. So it was a fun day and good to celebrate one of our local residents. And then on Tuesday, Governor Newsom, so he had been having fewer press conferences, and then as COVID cases have increased over the last few weeks, the noon press conference has kind of come back in force. On Tuesday, Governor Newsom said that there are now 26 counties on the watch list. So it was 19 and then 23 and then 26. But one of the things was Santa Clara County was moved off that watch list on Tuesday. And so, from a state level, they continue to prepare for the surge, and the state health officials were part of that press conference, and basically said we've learned a lot in the last 4 months, but we've gotten more prepared. And then as far as continually monitoring the number of cases that are happening in each county, the number of hospitalizations, which is critical, and then what's the capability around the state. From a PPE standpoint, we actually have been sending some of our state stockpiles of PPE equipment to other states that are in need. So, I think some have went to Oregon, Washington. So from that state, Arizona, trying to help some of the states that have had their own surges in the short term. But it was good to see that even from a county standpoint, we've taken in some some basically COVID-19 patients into our hospitals over the last month or so. And then also Governor Newsom declared July 2020 as California for Small Business Month. So that kind of launched a new campaign encouraging Californians to help small businesses in their communities operate safely during the pandemic, and doing whatever you can to support local businesses. As people I'm sure are aware, I do my weekly or my daily visits to a different restaurant, a different food truck, a different market within the city to kind of highlight what restaurants are there and what restaurants are open, and hear from the owners and hear how their business is, and highlight some of the restaurants and some of the unknown gems in our city. Has been a really good thing. I was on a mayor's call yesterday, and a lot of the mayors were like, that's a fantastic idea, we're going to do it in our city. So it's good to see whatever we can do. And this is the hard thing right now, is trying to build community and trying to get people out, whether or not it's just takeout or delivery, to support these local businesses. So at a state level, the governor's now declared that people, and kind of encouraging people to do that, and I'm happy to do my part. And it sounds like a lot of people enjoy the food photos if nothing else, but to find out about some of the restaurants that are around our city. Please shop local if you can whenever you're out. And then on Tuesday at a county level, there was, so part of this was, educating the state, and also talking, basically trying to figure out how to make sure that our order meets what the state requirements were. So on kind of an about-face, the state basically approved our variant. So they immediately approved alfresco dining, which was important for Morgan Hill and Gilroy. So that was the press conference. But they also approved our new county health order. So that will, that's the order that will go in place this Monday, July 13th. And that's the one that, allows gatherings, small gatherings, but allows barbershops, hair salons, lots of the small businesses. And it's that whole risk reduction model is more based upon, square footage of businesses, and trying to define something from that standpoint. So, the county is still urging, residents to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission by staying at home as much as possible. Individuals over 70, especially in those with underlying medical conditions, should stay home, except for, going out for essential needs and ordering in. There's still, Sunnyvale Cares is still providing delivery for food and medication if residents need that. So that's always available. But the new order strictly requires residents to follow social distancing requirements when outside of their home, and it generally prohibits all activities that don't allow for social distancing. And so we'll talk about gatherings in a little bit, but face coverings must be worn by everyone to comply with the face covering ordinance from the state level. But it also, from a business standpoint, it pushes telework. So businesses should, provide telework options to their employees as much as possible so that they can stay at home. And then, the new social distancing protocol requirements require small businesses, and actually all businesses, to fill out the latest. And so there's basically a description on how to fill it out in an online form to fill out the COVID, to basically specify that they're prepared, that they have an updated social distancing protocol that would then be printed out and displayed in their windows. And small businesses can find that at COVID19prepared.org. And then, a lot of this is all defined as far as number of employees and number of customers for small businesses are all based upon capacity limitations. And so there may not be more than one worker per 250 gross square feet of the facility, and no more than one customer or member of the public in whatever space is open to the public per 150 square feet of space that's actually open to the public. So that kind of set ratios as far as depending upon how much square footage, either public square footage or total square footage a business has, how many employees are allowed, and how many customers are allowed in that facility at any given time. It doesn't apply to healthcare facilities, educational facilities, childcare facilities. And from a capacity limit, it doesn't apply to children under the age of 12 when accompanying a parent into a business. So it does make, some exemptions to make sure that children, that are there with their parents can go into a facility, can make sure that, they are not counted in those total numbers. And then, businesses are also required to, if any of their employees are tested COVID-19 positive, that they need to basically report it to the county health department within 4 hours of finding out that information. And then that kicks off, the county health department to do appropriate tracing to make sure to find out how, who's come in contact with the people at this business, and figure out what workers have also been confirmed positive. And the other thing about this new county health order is it gave mandatory directives, and so it changed things just quite a little bit. That as opposed to trying to do everything, as one size fits all, it defined, basically depending upon the industry, what additional requirements might be in place for that specific industry. So there's one for personal services, so hair salons, nail salons, massage therapy, body care services, tattoo parlors and all that. Gym and fitness centers, construction, recreation and athletic activities. Sorry, drying out. Gatherings, social gatherings, religious gatherings, agricultural, hotel and motels, public transit, childcare, pools, outdoor dining, and food facilities. So, it's trying to define, depending upon what sector you're applied to, much more detailed description of what needs to get done from that operation of that facility. And one size doesn't fit all, and I've had multiple businesses contact me to try to get clarification. So I've been on the phone or sending emails to the county on multiple things, and from one of the big things is square footage. So it was one employee per 250 square feet, but they did make an exception, and it's kind of buried in the mandatory order, that small businesses with less than 1,000 square feet can have 4 employees working. So like the donut shops, or something that is basically just a kitchen and a almost no pickup area for whatever that food is. They are allowed to have at least 4 employees, but several small business owners uh, have more employees in that small space, and that's kind of operational depending upon, as shift changes are there, what makes sense. And this is some of the issues that I've been trying to work out from a county standpoint. Is it's like, okay, they were in total compliance with the previous health order, and now, are they grandfathered in? Is there a way that they can do an exception? Because I understand that it's 250 square feet, 1 employee per, but is it, is there ways that can be managed? Or it's like they still have all the appropriate mask and gloves and all that. So that's been a bigger question. Not really sure how that'll go from a county standpoint. They need to get these approval. They got the general approval from the state on the 201 employee per 250 square feet. To go less than that for a specific industry conceivably requires additional state approval. So they're working with that and trying to see whether or not we can grandfather in some of these existing businesses that were already open. And then let's see. And as far as gatherings are concerned, so I've had several groups reach out as far as gatherings, outdoor. So they put a mandatory directive around gatherings together, but and it was fine as far as outdoor, but the mandatory directive for gatherings still says indoor gatherings are not allowed. And so I'm not sure if that was part of the initial documentation that kind of fell through. They still talk about indoor or outdoor, you need to do safe social distancing, you need to wear your mask, all those sorts of things. You need to do appropriate sanitation if you're doing seats and such. That being said, the gatherings, at least from the county health order, said both indoor and outdoor. And then when the mandatory directive regarding gatherings went into place, or was finally issued, it said that indoor gatherings aren't allowed. So I'm not really sure if that's a typo at the end of the day, but trying to or that the county has not really figured out, or the state said we don't agree to the gathering concept. Not really sure, but I'm still trying to get clarification on that. And then on Wednesday, Newsom had another press conference. And Wednesday was, a milestone from California's standpoint, that we surpassed 300,000 cases of COVID-19. And it was also more than 6,800 deaths so far during the pandemic. And so that was, that again, Governor Newsom has been working with the different counties that especially have seen large increases, and a lot of it has to do with Southern California, but Napa, Marin, some of the counties in the North Bay here have actually seen a large number also. So it's trying, and so that watch list of 23 to 26 counties continues to change depending upon how the rates of COVID-19 are within the county, as well as how many hospitalizations they have, how many deaths they have, and what the numbers were. And the numbers are important, and the state has really been looking at it percentage wise. One of the things that they didn't take into consideration is if you have very low numbers and you get another case or two, the percentage looks horrible. So if you have 2 hospitalizations and you get 2 more, that's 100% increase, as opposed to if you have 100 hospitalizations and you get 2 more, that's 2%. And so we had counties around us that have been a lot higher in either COVID cases or hospitalizations, that from a number standpoint, they were not even on the watch list, or they were allowed to have, outdoor seating, or they have, barbershops and hair salons opens. But from a percentage standpoint, they weren't increasing because we've kept our numbers so low overall. Those increases looked really bad. And so that was one of the reasons why that variance was ultimately allowed to go forward. That being said, the state is looking at watching, lots of counties around the state very, very closely. One of the other things the governor brought up was the danger of wildfires. And so California, and this actually surprised me, has already seen more wildfires this year than we had all of last year. So last year we had about 2,500 cases of wildfire, and this year we've already had more than 4,000. That being said, at least the size of those has substantially decreased. So as opposed to some of the major ones that burned, thousands of acres last year, we've had some small fires, but of course we're still early in the fire season. So it's really important that, people be safe. And, as we're entering peak fire season, it's usually like late summer to early fall. The state is preparing for how to deal with that, especially under COVID-19. And so, it's new measures for the firefighters, especially when they're off duty, when they're, basically trying to take a break between fighting those fires. And then also people that are evacuated out of those fire zones, taking them to hotels or college dorm rooms instead of, large living facilities. So normally it would be school gyms and all that. That doesn't work under COVID-19. It's making sure that they have appropriate segregation in different rooms, providing appropriate masks, and then as far as feeding them, not, it used to be buffets, it's now has to be individual meals. And so there's a whole list of medical staff that now need to monitor for potential COVID-19 outbreaks while overseeing evacuation centers and evacuation and firefighting itself. So it's a big challenge from a state level. And, the other thing was, the state prison system often has prisoners help prevent fires. And, with what's happening with COVID-19, that won't happen this year. And so there's lots of issues of fighting fires, especially this year with COVID-19. That was one of the reasons why, it's like the fireworks from last week were really, disheartening from my standpoint. And, we had quite a few cases here, more so than I can remember in our city, but nothing like I saw in, Southern California. It was just amazing to see, some of the Los Angeles photos of continual fireworks across LA County, all happening simultaneously. And so, they finally started to settle down, but we're lucky we didn't have, fires here in Sunnyvale. So I'm happy from that standpoint, but just people, basically putting their own lives at risk and then putting other people's lives at risk for fireworks was, really, really a bad thing to see happening. But hopefully we'll get through the whole fireworks season this year as soon as possible. Okay, let's move on to the county health dashboard. So we had additional new cases over the last week. We're now up to 5,768 cases. So additional 132 cases just yesterday. And from a San Jose standpoint, they've had 3,682 cases. That's about 600 more than last week at this time. In Sunnyvale, we have 305 cases. That's about 59 cases up from last week. So we've had additional cases. It's kind of leveled out. Same thing. We've had an uptick about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and it's kind of leveled out. If you take a look at our numbers over the last few days, it might have dropped, but that average is the important thing, because depending upon how quickly results come in from the testing, it goes up and down. So it's constantly kind of moving up and down depending upon what those cases are. We're now at 166 deaths within the county. And, people keep asking, it's like, can you list that per city? Right now, the county isn't providing that. It's slightly tied to HIPAA because once they go into the hospitals, we don't know if there's other underlying conditions. We don't know, so we don't have that full breakdown. They do have the generic stats, and so we're not tracking them back to specific people. Hospital availability still looks good. Currently we have 104 COVID-19 patients in the hospital, and our PPE numbers look good. Overall we're prepared for an increase in a surge, but things are looking generally good at a county level. And I've been doing a lot of advocating, whether or not it's COVID-19 measures and how we open up, or getting additional testing within our city. This is a time that I've spent a lot more time on the phone and in Zoom meetings or other meetings to get updates or give feedback that I've been hearing from residents or from businesses trying to get by, or trying to just get their answers, get questions to their answers that they've had. And so that's been really important. And so let me get to my weekly questions, and hopefully this will help resolve some of your questions that you've had. I've heard from multiple people, when will the Fremont pool reopen? And so this has been an ongoing question for a few weeks, almost a month now. So again, after 18 years, the California Sports Center decided that they could not operate the Sunnyvale Swim Complex at Fremont High School, and that used to be run in basically a partnership between the California Sports Center, Fremont High School, and the city, to make sure that we provide appropriate swim options to the water polo team at Fremont High, and residents, and then other people from outside of the city that all want to basically use that swim center. And it's a lovely swim center. But the city finally finalized its plan to offer swim lap pool appointments based upon the current COVID-19 restrictions. The short-term plan will be mornings 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and evenings 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, and that begins this Monday, July 13th. And the appointment scheduling went online Wednesday, so 2 days ago, and I've already seen that a lot of people have reserved that. And so you have a lot of reservations already. I think certain hours are already basically fully used on Monday, and it looked kind of Monday through Wednesday of next week, and it's very busy, but it allows that. So on the Sunnyvale website, people, if you search for pool, you can find it. I'll put it into the chat window and probably do a post about it, but it allows you to book an appointment and purchase a swim pass, and then you get a lane assignment, and it's $12 per person, but you get a lane assignment an hour, and you have 45 minutes within that hour to basically do lap pool swimming. So, and you can go to the Sunnyvale website to find out more on that. Is there any idea when my gym will be open? And that happens July 13th. So definitely that's part of the new county health order, and we'll see how the different gyms ultimately are going to put the appropriate measures in place. Let's see. Oh, how can I help? So one of the things you can do, and I get the how can I help quite often. One thing you can do, of course, is donate to Sunnyvale Community Services. And this is an ongoing thing. The city helps fund Sunnyvale Community Services. We on the very first night on St. Patrick's Day of the shelter in place, We approved, $250,000 to Sunnyvale Community Services. Since then, we've given them, another $350,000, and this money is for, rent assistance, food assistance, utility assistance for people in need in our community, and so they do a lot of that operation and that on the ground efforts to help people, providing food on a weekly basis, and right now, if you feel like donating, there's a triple your donation match for going on until July 16th. So until the end of next week, you basically Intuitive, LinkedIn, Google, Facebook, they all basically join forces to triple your donations up to $30,000. So, hopefully if you've been thinking about donating, and this is mainly for one thing, it's to help Sunnyvale children have a better chance in the upcoming school year. So this is for SCS's backpack to school program. And so this gives, children a new backpack, age appropriate school supplies, a gift card for shoes and extra food for that child and their family. So it's really important. If you've been thinking about, donating, this is a great time to do it. One of the other things you can do, and I mentioned this last week, is if you have fabric, and there's people that are sewing masks, but there's an effort right now to make masks and collect fabric. So if, and I have this, I think it's part of my current events until July 15th. So it started July 1st, July 15th. If you are a crafter or something, you can donate fabric, or if you have other materials that would make good masks, you can donate them. And there's places around Sunnyvale, Mountain View, Palo Alto, other cities, other locations that you can drop those off, put them in a plastic bag and drop them off. And ultimately, there's a group of people that are gathering fabric to make masks for community organizations. So like Ayudando Latinos a Solar, which is basically for farm workers, laborers, people that are unhoused. It's a grassroots community that really needs masks, and this is one of the things that I'm always doing is, people are giving me masks to donate, and it's amazing to hear how many people are still using disposable masks when they're out, or that people that have one mask. And it's really important that you get into the habit of coming home, washing your hands if you're out at the grocery or whatever, washing your hands, and then washing your mask in warm water, also letting it dry. If you need to go back out, it's good to have a spare. So it's really important. And during the COVID-19 testing at Murphy Park last week, we passed out several hundred masks to people that needed them. So I was happy to be able to replace certain people that were using reusable masks with replace their disposable masks with reusable masks, which was fantastic, because the number of waste that's going on, the number of garbage collected because of disposed of masks and gloves and everything else is really increased lately. And so, the fabrics that are needed should be dense. When you hold them up to the light, you shouldn't be able to see through them, but they shouldn't be decorator fabrics, curtains or upholstery, or so it's because they often are Scotch guarded or flame retardant. And so you have until July 15th to drop those off. And it just helps people that are in need. It gives certain people, a chance to give back to their community. And it also, gives people who really need masks a chance to get masks. So thank you very much for considering to do that. Common question, what's happening with downtown? And so, they're still working on the Whole Foods building, interior wise, and hopefully September, October, that's opening up. AMC is still, not allowed from a state standpoint. No theaters are allowed to open, so we'll see what happens as far as that's concerned. But that's in a good state, and hopefully AMC will be opening. One of the other things is coming in front of council and multiple commissions in the next month or so is the downtown developments. And so there's multiple downtown developments and several plans that are in place. And so that were, there's an EIR, environmental impact report, and the downtown specific plan that's being updated. But there's also an update to the downtown parking policies, the agreement with ST Ventures, and so there's several sites besides what I'll say is the City Line site, and the downtown specific plan covers that site as well as additional, conceivably retail, housing, office space, and especially office space at the old post office building, and then then the parking lot at the corner of at the corner of Evelyn and Sunnyvale, right by the Caltrain tracks. There's several sites that are coming forward, and in November of 2019, the draft environmental impact report was issued, and we had a whole bunch of updates for the downtown specific plan. That is finally coming to the end of the community outreach period, and it'll be reviewed by several boards and commissions. So you can give comment at either the boards and commissions, or you can give comment at City Council. So upcoming meetings for that are BPAC Thursday, July 16th, the Sustainability Commission Monday, July 20th, the Heritage Preservation Commission Wednesday, July 22nd, Planning Commission on Monday, July 27th, and then a special council meeting on Tuesday, August 11th. So that's been an ongoing effort to figure out what the new downtown looks like, City Line Phase 2, as well as several of these other developers that wanted to develop their sites downtown. And so I think this is a good vision. We'll see what the final DSP was. It was just released yesterday. I haven't had a chance to look at it at all, but it's important that that people, if they have input, I've already been talking to downtown association, several residents who want to give impact. Now is your chance to kind of go through those plans. I'll be putting out info in Facebook either on this link or a separate link to talk about getting that feedback. So that's important. Let's see. What can we vote in November to bring fiber internet to Sunnyvale faster? I get the feeling that companies keep blaming the city restrictions and cities keep blaming company policies. So from a fiber standpoint, this issue comes up and has come up before. There's no restrictions from a city standpoint, although there's some restrictions, on how certain carriers deal with their equipment. But we were actually very close to having fiber in Sunnyvale a few years ago. Google, was doing a lot of additional fiber installation around the South Bay here, and then they backed off from that. So we were close to having it. I'm constantly looking at, from a smart city standpoint, how we can provide more fiber, within our city. I've been working with several providers, and we talk, and then nothing seems to happen. I'd be happy to see it come here. And I'm always ready to talk to businesses about what their barriers are to get it installed here. Sunnyvale, the more we can be a smart city, the better it is. And so definitely during the shelter-in-place times, we've seen kind of the digital divide that some people have. Providing what we're doing at the library now. And one of the things that we've done is now lend out Chromebooks, lend out Wi-Fi. There was Google donated a whole bunch of money, $100,000 to the Sunnyvale Education Foundation, which then helped additional students. What we've also done, and I think I mentioned this previously, is we had a Crossing the Digital Divide grant that we got from the state PUC to try to help low-income families get basically a computer and Wi-Fi, basically a cable connection into their home for an extended period of time. So the parents had to go through a program, go through classes, and at the end of that, to better understand how to monitor their children's use of computers, and then move forward to actually, so they went through an 8-week program, and we had our first parents go through that program at the beginning or at last fall. We're actually changing that program now so the parents can sign up, and then we give them the Wi-Fi and the Chromebook at the very beginning of the program, and then they go through those classes at home. Same thing that we had before, but now they're doing it safe, social distanced. How can I get involved? One thing you can always do is join a commission, and I've been doing. This is often a question that I get asked at my office hours when I had office hours at Bean Seam. But you can join a commission right now. We have applications open for the Board of Building Code Appeals, the Housing and Human Services Commission, and the Sustainability Commission. Every quarter, there's always seems to be a few openings, sometimes more than others, from a commission standpoint. And so we're constantly taking applications from residents. And then one of the things you can do, if you know someone, so I don't know if you've received your Horizon newspaper yet, but right now, if you're proud of someone, you can nominate them for one of the multiple awards that we give on a yearly basis. So we're looking towards the State of the City that'll be happening in September. But right now, it's the time that we're taking those applications for nominating, the best teacher of the year, the best business, So there's lots of different categories, and of course the Mayor's Award. But that's the important thing is if you have people to suggest, definitely I'll post about that also. Let's see. Do you have a report on the swab screen of non-symptomatic folk sessions? Is it helping to set up the contact tracing? So yes, definitely. And I think the governor actually mentioned, contact tracing, and we're one of the better counties to have, more than 90% contact tracing in place. We've went through, I think we have over 800 or 900 people that are currently being trained or already been trained to do contact tracing. So that's actually been very positive from a county standpoint. And I don't have the actual counts from last week. I've requested it from this county, and they have a lot of things going on their plate, but trying to figure out what the positive rate was, as well as what the breakdown of the people coming to get tested in Sunnyvale was. Was that breakdown, mainly Sunnyvale residents? Did people come from Santa Clara, Cupertino? It depends. It'd be very interesting to see where people were coming. I think the first day, the first person in line had been there. It wasn't from Sunnyvale, but she'd been there got there at 6:30 a.m. just to get tested. And so this is the important thing, is to make sure that and it also makes the case of when we're talking to the county to say, look, we need more testing, and it was very successful from that standpoint. But it'd be good to see what that breakdown ultimately is. I have a friend who owns this hair salon. They were told that they would be allowed to open this upcoming Monday. Will that still continue or not because of the changes? Yes, barbershops, hair salons will be open, and they do need to fill out, they need to fill out the SCC COVID or the COVID-19 prepared.org website, and to define what their procedures are, as well as they need to read the personal services mandatory directive to make sure that they're going to follow all the things that are in place as far as how many employees can be inside their facility, what the requirements are for, especially for personal services, how to clean down after every customer, all that's very critical as far as to prevent those specific facilities from spreading COVID-19. So that will be open on Monday. I couldn't get anywhere near the testing. Every time I went, 3 times, it was packed, and it was only during work hours, so it makes it hard to stand in line for an hour. Definitely, you can get tested at other locations. Like El Camino Hospital does have appointments, so they're very good as far as that's concerned. And I think Planned Parenthood also has appointments. But we're also that was one of the feedback. That was part of the feedback that I gave the county, that when they're doing these pop-ups, especially for multiple days, having one day that goes later makes a lot of sense. And having more nurses on site that are actually administering the tests is also critical. So trying to get the people through the operation a lot faster, which was important. And so hopefully we'll have more testing within Sunnyvale soon. What's being done about fireworks. So I got a report from the chief on the number of cases, the number of, we had several hundred complaints about fireworks. They did multiple visits. Most of the time, by the time they got there, they couldn't find anyone. And we're looking at ways to, basically manage that a little bit more, put more teeth into the ordinance as far as making it a larger fine for people if they have fireworks. So we're trying to deal with that, but it's a county-wide problem, and also looking at it from a county-wide basis. Are there other things that we can do, especially as we're entering fire season, which is critical? What can we do to get permanent testing sites in North County? And so the pop-up sites are there. So one of the things, the county order that happened about 4 weeks ago, was forcing all of the county health facilities to test people whether or not they're symptomatic. And that was critical because people were saying that they wanted to get tested, they had insurance, but the healthcare facility wouldn't test them. That was finally resolved, but we're trying to get permanent sites within our city as much as possible, and every hospital trying to get that. But right now it's pop-up sites, at least for now, within our city. Is the employer required to let employees know if employees tested COVID-19 positive? Yes. So there's a whole kind of when an employee is tested positive with COVID-19, the employer needs to inform the county. They also need to inform all the other employees that person has been working with, and the county, and they also give those names to the county so that they can do appropriate contact tracing. So that's an important part of this whole process is, first detecting, who's been infected, and then figuring out who they've come in contact with. And, that's a critical portion of what's going on here. Do you have any ideas of how to slow down car travel, especially buses on Washington Avenue? So definitely we've looked at traffic calming reminders and what the speed limits are. That's definitely put in a request. You can always put in a request on Sunnyvale Access about complaining about speeding cars. That's important as far as then the public safety goes out and figures out whether or not to put traffic calming measures in place, putting reminders there, doing additional traffic controls. All that's important to kind of slow down speeds within the community. Obed Mediterranean, yes, I've actually already visited there and was happy to highlight them a few weeks ago, or now a month ago. We're over, it's the surprising thing, I've gone to over 110 restaurants now, 112 restaurants, and I keep finding out the locations in the city that I didn't know about, and in hearing people's stories, restaurants that have been here forever or for multiple years, and just not knowing them and not going to them. So it's actually been very positive from that standpoint. Let's see. It's after 10, so let's go ahead and wrap up. I did want to give people another chance to hear me talk. If you didn't have enough of me talking for an hour, on Sunday afternoon at 3:30 p.m., and so I'll be Also publishing this live on my website or on my Facebook page. I'll be having a conversation with a Palo Alto council member, Greg Tanaka, and it's all mainly around our Department of Public Safety model. And if you want to hear more about our merged fire, police, EMS training that goes into every public safety officer, here's a good chance to hear that. Palo Alto actually directed their staff to take a close look at the Sunnyvale model, as far as potentially saving money and as well as kind of changing what their public safety looks like. They right now have separated fire and police within their city, and looking at it as a possibility. So, Greg was elected November of 2016, and he's one of the only council members I've talked to that does regular outreach meetings and updates with the residents. So he does it, I think, once a month. And in talking to me during when we were running, one of the positive things that I said, because I started my office hours basically the Friday after I got sworn into council in September of 2016, and I basically told him what a positive thing that was to get that feedback from the residents, showing transparency and helping them get more involved in their community. And he basically has done live meetings or stream meetings on a monthly basis for several years now. And I think that's been, I really applaud him for listening, and it's a best way to listen to your residents at the end of the day. And so if you want to hear more about our DPS, it's on my events page, and I'll be posting about it when it's live, and you can always go back and watch it later if you want. So with that, please remember to help your neighbors, make and share masks, do whatever you can do during COVID-19. It's difficult for a lot of people during these times. Help your community. I'm really proud of Sunnyvale residents pulling together and helping neighbors, helping strangers, putting free things out in front of their house for people to take home, whatever it is. It's actually been really, really amazing. So if you're out on a walk, wave, say hello to people from a safe social distance. Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We're in this together. We'll get through this together. And thanks for listening. Until next week, have a safe week. Take care. Goodbye.